What if the biggest obstacle between you and the change you want in life isn't your circumstances, but your mindset? Every day, people make plans, they set goals, and try to reach them only to stay stuck in the same old patterns of behavior over and over and over again. So, why does this happen? Is it a lack of discipline or something deeper? Today, we're diving into how your thoughts shape your behavior and how changing the way you think could change your life. Hello, everybody, and welcome to LifeTVnow, where we unpack all matters of truth, faith, and freedom. I'm Joe Artis Horn. Today, for some of you watching this program, you're about to experience a whole new way of thinking, and it might just change your life. Before we dive in, let me introduce who's here. She's an integrative nutrition health coach with a Master of Science in Health Education. Please welcome our Executive Director, Jamie Woodle. And she's a motivational speaker and clinical therapist with a master's degree in counseling and training in neurofeedback and mindset transformation. She helps people break through mental and emotional barriers to create healthier, more fulfilling lives. Alongside her husband, Dr. Steve Troeger, she co-leads Step Into Vitality, a wellness consulting practice focused on sustainable physical and mental health. Please welcome Debbie Troeger. Debbie, I've been aware of some of your work, not all of it, but some of it, and I have been maximum impressed with what I've seen over the last few years. We share mutual friends with people like Dr. Ralph Umbriaco, Dr. Steve Hewlett, Dr. Ann Hines, Dr. Rachel Shuck, and of course, by way of introduction, our good mutual friend who is also in studio today, the one and only Billy Coppage. Billy is the one behind what I perceive to be the fastest growing healthcare conference in the nation, The Secrets in Healthcare. Wonderful doctors, Dr. Brian Artis, John Richardson. It's just a stacked card. It'll be happening later this November. And we'll be talking with you as the weeks unfold about that event and how to get tickets and to make sure you don't miss it. But one of the presenters, and I saw you in 2024 the first time, and then again last year at The Secrets in Healthcare, you have this dynamite way of helping people overcome what maybe aren't necessarily circumstantial based dilemmas in life, but maybe more mental blockages or lack of perception, or maybe the need for a shift in perspective. And that might be the most profound way to help loosen somebody maybe into their calling or pursue what God has for them in life. You've made it your mission to help people. What, before we get into that, personally drove you, though, to get into this line of helping humankind?
Well, I saw how understanding mindset changed my life and understood that there were so many opportunities as I grew up that I missed out on because I was too afraid. I was afraid of failing. And so when I look back and say, oh, if I had only known what I know now, there's so many other things I would have done. And so people aren't really limited by their abilities. They're limited by their beliefs and the stories they tell themselves. And so if I can just help people break through those limiting beliefs so that they can, like you said, pursue their passion and their dreams, then that's what I want to be about.
We had an interesting moment right before we started rolling, folks, where we're standing right behind where I'm at right now, next to the edge of what is about a foot platform. And I said to one of my constituents, I said, "Don't fall." And Debbie goes, "Don't say don't fall. Say stand firmly on the platform." And I'm like, she's already doing it. She's already working on me. What made you realize that focusing on what you want is more powerful than focusing on what you're trying to avoid?
Well, so actually in high school, I realized this. So I was playing basketball. I did a lot of sports. And so there's some games I was really on and some games I was totally off. And I started thinking about why is that? It's not like I got that much worse 2 days later or something, right? So I started just kind of paying attention to what I was thinking about during those games. And so the games that I was so focused on, oh, don't screw up, don't make a mistake, don't throw the ball away, don't miss the shot. That's exactly what I did. And so the games that I played well, I was just in the moment and I was just playing and having fun and I just didn't have all this pressure on myself. And I started studying other athletes and seeing what they did. And I'm like, okay, I just need to focus on what I want. And I also read another book called Think Thin and Be Thin. And it talked about, I had gained 25 pounds my freshman year of high school. And if you're an athlete, 25 pounds on the court is a lot to drag around. So I'm doing the math. And I say, okay, if I keep this up, my senior year, I'm going to be 100 pounds overweight. So I've got to figure this out. So I really started studying diets and focusing, I got to lose weight. Well, then I found this book. And of course, I'd lose some and then gain that back plus twice as much. And And so I read this book and it said, okay, when you focus on the weight, you just gain more weight. So whatever you focus on, that's what you get more of. And so when I realized that, it's like, okay, quit focusing on the weight and just start focusing on eating the good foods that you want to eat. And then people think differently than overweight people. So you really start to think like, imagine yourself as if you've already achieved the goal. So if I want to be a thin person or a healthy person, I need to start thinking like a thin or a healthy person. So what would a healthy person do? What choices would they make? And just start acting as if you've already accomplished that goal.
It's interesting that you see it framed that way, because I have said my whole life that people's fear of places like hell or discipline from God, they typically aren't sustainable methodologies for, I guess, walking in a Christian calling, walking in his will for your life. They're very fleeting. And of course, my father was, the late, great Dr. Thomas Horn. He did big tent revivals in the 70s. He led innumerable people to the Lord. And he often would say that people would, they would listen to the hellfire brimstone messages and they would be scared into Jesus, right? They'd find their come to Jesus because they want to avoid discipline or chaos or the hellfire and the brimstone. But being motivated by a fearful outcome is usually not super sustainable. People are more attracted to falling in love with Jesus when they experience his holding power and his blessings. And you're doing this life that's going to be what? Filled with trouble, right? In this life, there's going to be what? Trouble.
Yeah.
Jesus is a sustaining power that helps us get through those things. I want to bring up a scripture very quickly, Romans 12:2, because I think it applies here. It says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind."
That's right. That's
Debbie Troeger. "Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." Is that not what Debbie's describing it? Why do you think it's human? Can I say it's human nature? I don't know if you agree with that, but at least from my vantage point, why do you think so many people, if it's not human nature in total, get stuck focusing on what they're afraid of or what they want to avoid, and that becomes their motivation to go this way as opposed to embracing the thing that maybe God's leading them toward?
Well, I think that's kind of the way we're designed, honestly. I mean, our ego is there to make sure that we get from birth to death as safe as possible. So it's always like looking out for, what to avoid so that it can keep you safe. But sometimes that gets in the way of you actually being able to pursue your goals. Because that fear, that fight or flight, it was put into us by God just to keep us safe from getting eaten by wild animals. And that's a fear that we should, respect, right? However, that same feeling, that same, fear gets kind of wrapped up when we just feel uncomfortable. And then that same fight or flight feeling when we're just doing something new, that's kind of that overwhelming fear kind of comes onto us and almost feels like it's like a bear chasing us when it's really not. And so we want to avoid that. So I think that's just the way our brain's designed, is to keep us safe. And so we avoid things that make us feel uncomfortable. That's the reason I try to do things that make me feel uncomfortable all the time, is just to get used to that. This is how you always feel when you're doing something new. And fear shows up a lot of different ways. Sometimes it looks like procrastination. It looks like overanalyzing, like you've got to get all the information before you're going to do anything.
Wow.
And that's just really kind of your brain just protecting you, because your brain just your subconscious just wants to stay with the running program. It doesn't like change. And so it will do its best just to keep you stuck in this little platform so it doesn't want to change. So fear can show up a lot of different ways.
It's funny that you describe that way, because I've always thought that was one of my giftings, but I've paid a tremendous physical toll for thinking that way. And you're right. My life, I always told, everybody that administrates around me, I've always told them, I'm the guy you bring in at the end when you think you've got a plan, and I'll start pulling apart, the blind spots. And I've always thought that was a good way to be a completionist, or that God is using that. But I have, and there is wisdom in being cautious and pragmatic and thinking through things. But I then step over what you're talking about, that line between cautious and pragmatic, into like fear and anxiety, the fear that this is going to go south real quick. And it ends up being paralyzing. And a lot of times I hate it, but my decision making is very slow. It's not keeping up with all the demands of everything. And I've paid a toll with my cortisol and my health from doing exactly the thing, Debbie, that you're describing. So I need to work on looking at ministry, Billy Coppage, more through the lens of what we feel God is moving us towards, as opposed to strategies to avoid the dismantling of the damage that may be incurred if we make a misstep or we mispackage something. We hear terms like conscious mind, and that's something that a lot of New Agers have kind of hijacked and tormented into something else that isn't biblical. Subconscious mind. and then ego. But for someone hearing this for the first time, how would you explain the difference between, conscious mind, subconscious, and ego in maybe a very simple way?
So your conscious mind is kind of that part of your mind that makes decisions and it's very logical. And I kind of like to think of your brain as like a computer. So the monitor is, would you say, is your conscious mind? That's just what you're aware of is on the monitor. And then the hard drive is where all the programs run, all the software. So in your subconscious, that's where all your memories are stored, all your feelings, all your beliefs, and it runs all the automatic programs. It's kind of like when you first learned to drive a car. I mean, you consciously had to say, okay, now I'm turning on the key and now I'm backing up and you're paying attention to all that. But after you learn to do that, it's just an automatic program that runs. You just get in and you just kind of go off somewhere and you don't even realize how you got home, right? It's because your automatic program is running that. Well, a lot of us, we have beliefs that we don't even realize are there because 50% of what we believe we decided before we were 5 years old, just because parents told us this is what's true. And then we just believed it because we didn't have the ability, because our brain wasn't formed to be able to consciously say, is that really true or is that not true? And so we just took it as a belief. And so we grow up, just having these things that we believe. We don't recognize them as beliefs. We just think they're true. And that kind of runs in the background program and maybe keeps us from doing things that we might have done otherwise. And then the ego is there, like I said, to keep us safe. And then the ego's job is to just remind us to be safe and keep us there, but also to make sure that we're right. So whatever we believe is true, it's going to make sure you continually see validation that that belief is true. So let's just say, for an example, a kid grows up and they trip or fall, right? Some adult says, oh, wow, you're just so clumsy. Then the kid, they trip again and they go, oh, that's because I'm clumsy. So when you say I am, and then whatever you say after that, you've just defined yourself. So what does God says? He is, I am the great I am. I'm the beginning, the end, and everything that will be, right? Our words have power. And so when we speak those things over ourselves, it's powerful. It creates something, okay? And so whatever we say I am, then we've just defined ourselves. And then our subconscious and our ego are there to make sure we got to keep this identity. We've got to keep this identity. So it just puts you in this little box.
Do you think that's why I don't know if this is the right terminology, but the automatic subconscious, the one that was in development at these very young ages that have never, gone back to be challenged. People have never self-navigated their way to go back and to quantify whether or not something that was spoken over them really indeed is who they are. Do you think that that is part of what's sabotaging people that are trying to set goals and to try to believe in something different than what they're stuck in?
Right.
And they don't even see it.
Well, you take somebody who maybe they say they want to be financially successful and everything they do just fails and they're constantly failing at that. There's probably a belief about money, about people who are wealthy that they don't even realize they have. And as long as your ego judges people who have what you say you want, it's not going to allow you to get there. Interesting. Well, this lady that I was working with, she came into my office and she lost about 50 pounds and we'd been working through these things. But then the last couple of weeks that she came in, she started kind of gaining weight back. And I said to her, it seems like you're sabotaging yourself. I said, why do you think you're doing this? And she says, I really don't know. And so I asked her, I said, well, what do you think about thin women? And she goes, well, I think they're skinny. And she said the B word. And I said, whoa, okay, well, I think that's really going to be a problem, okay? Because as long as you feel that way about thin women, you're never going to be one. So you either need to change the way you feel about those women, or you're never going to get there. Maybe someday in the supermarket or something, this thin woman cut her off and said something bad. And then she just immediately, our brain tries to put a meaning behind something and just kind of give some context. And so, oh, that's because those women are just those kind of people. So now anytime she sees a thin woman, she has that interaction, and that's the way that interaction goes. But if you believe that those people were kind and nice, then you would probably notice kind or nice women. Have you ever purchased a car and you don't think anybody has that car? You don't really see that on the road very much. But then after you buy that car, you see it everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay, so that's how the subconscious works, okay? And so it's kind of like when you believe something, then everything you see, you only highlight those things that validate that belief.
I would not say this is mystical. There's nothing mystical taking place here. Are you suggesting that the blockage is unknown to the experiencer, the person that can't seem to break their cycle, because it prevents them from making the decisions to pursue the ideal weight for them in ways that they don't see? So there's nothing mystical. It's about having a bias against, let's say, a thin woman because they judge them to be bougie or wealthy or better than others or whatever.
Right.
And so what? They comfort eat? There's an explanation for why then they're not losing the weight beyond just they have a predisposition to be biased against thin women. Like, what is the blockage? Where are they getting stuck?
Well, I think if you have that belief that thin women are just unkind people or not nice, whatever, your body's just not going to let you get there because it doesn't want you to be that person. So if you're judging someone that you want to be, they have what you want, then you're not going to get there.
I don't know about the audience, but I'm finding this really relatable. Is anyone else connecting with this? Do you have thoughts going through your head? I definitely am. In fact, I on both sides, when I go through my childhood and also as a parent, thoughts in my head, you make a comment, maybe you're trying to brush off something, but you are not aware of what you are planning in your child's head. I know when I was young, my mom pinched the fat on my side, and I'm not throwing her under the bus. We have a great relationship. She already knows about this issue that I have. She pinched the fat on my side and she's like, you need to go on a diet. And that was my first awareness of my weight and that I need to do something about it. And she did it out of love because she has struggled with her weight her whole life. And she was trying to bring awareness early so that maybe I could cut it off, but I just ended up falling into the same yo-yo dieting patterns and everything. And so, wow, from both. And I know our audience, I'm sure, can think of something that they have labeled themselves because of this, or maybe something they have noticed that they are putting on their children that they can now try to cut off and circumvent and get rid of that. So,
well, there is absolutely power. We know this from the Bible. There's power in the words that we speak. So self-deprecation, like you've explained, you're sending your body, whether it knows that this is conscious or subconscious or not, you're sending your body, you're sending your cells a message that I am not worthy. And I'm probably guilty of this. I'm constantly disparaging my bald-headedness and talking about, man, is the cortisol weight showing through? Or, where's my tie? Is this a good color for me because I'm on TV? And,
we do try to stop it, by the way. We don't just let them get away with it.
I'm not going to say I succeed 100% in the Debbie Troeger teaching methodologies, but I'm learning some stuff. How do limiting beliefs take root in the first place? And what does it look like to replace those with truth, especially when they don't line up with who God says we are?
So limiting beliefs, they start, like we said, maybe a parent says something and then you define yourself as that. Or maybe something happens to you and our brain tries to find some meaning. It's an event that happens and our brain's trying to find out why and make some kind of meaning behind it. Rationalize it. Well, that's just because I'm stupid, or that's just because I'm not smart enough. I got passed over just because I'm not this or I'm not that. So we try to rationalize and kind of put some meaning to it. And so a root belief gets set that way. And I also believe that sometimes not all of our thoughts that go through our head are actually our thoughts, I don't believe. I think Satan plants things in there, to try to sabotage us, to keep us from getting out of our box. Maybe we're getting too dangerous.
Take captive every thought.
Right.
Some thoughts.
Exactly. And I really encourage people, pay attention to what you're telling yourself, the thoughts that are going through your head. And if it doesn't line up with God who says you are, then that's not you. Okay. Satan is about fear and he wants to create fear. That's not from God, right?
Right.
Well, it's kind of interesting. When they built the Golden Gate Bridge, there are many people who fell off that bridge in the process of building it because they were so afraid of falling. And then they built a net to go under the bridge, and then no one fell after that because no one was worried about falling. And so you think about it. So Jesus died for our sins. He covered everything we're ever going to do, any mess up that we make. So he's got it. So we don't have to worry about falling because there's a net, right? So we can just focus on what we want and where we want to go, and we don't have to worry about, those other things.
Yeah, there's a difference between repentance. A repentant person, go forward and sin no more. There is a time and a season to be repentant. So this is not Debbie Troeger saying you have a license to do whatever you want because God's already paid the price.
Yeah.
There's a repentant human, but what we are talking about is mental blockages, a lot of them self-assigned or assigned by others. This is something we see a lot at Whispering Ponies Ranch every year when we deal with children that are in desperate need of therapy. Debbie, you got to see it. I want Debbie to come out and see what we do at Whispering Ponies Ranch.
That'd be cool.
No, for real. We deal with some of the most shut down, psychologically traumatized, physically traumatized kids ever.
Do you remember Susie? Her mother called her a scaredy cat.
Yes. Perfect example. Yeah. Thank you. Little Susie last year, she's up on the zip line with me and Jamie Woodle, who are running this event. It's a place where children can come and experience like a challenge. They have to overcome their fear of heights and trust the equipment that they're going to ride this zip line to completion and that Uncle Joe has done a good job and they're going to be safe. Well, she's crying. And finally, after like 3 or 4 days of this going on, she comes up and she won't do the zip line and she cries. And she comes again the next day and then she cries. And the next day she comes and she cries. Finally, she says, I'm a scaredy cat. And I think it was Jamie said, why do you say that? And she says, my mom told me I'm a scaredy cat. And so this is a perfect example on display of a child who has had things spoken over them, Debbie Troeger, and now she is living out like would you call it a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Yeah.
She's limiting herself away from what she wants, which is to ride the zip. This is why she keeps coming back, because somebody has spoken over her that she's a scaredy cat. This is something she's bought into.
Right.
Is that a good example?
Yeah, it's right. It's perfect.
There's a couple more things I want to get to before we run out of time. These programs always go so fast, Debbie, but why does fear tend to show up right before a breakthrough? And how should we be responding when fear rears its ugly head?
Well, right before the breakthrough, that's just your ego's final thing to keep you stuck, because it's just reminding you this is not your identity. It's kind of like your old self breaking through the doorway to the new self. And so that last fear is like, if this is really what you want. I kind of got a vision of like when you go to a circus and you see like a horse jumping through a firing ring or something. I mean, it's just like, okay, the firing ring, and you just got to go through it. It's not a wall. I mean, it's just, but you got to go through it. You know, there's a book called The Tipping Point, and sometimes people quit just before they get to the tip. Sometimes when you're starting a new business, doing something new, it feels like you're pushing a boulder up a hill.
Oh, yeah.
And you just got to keep pushing. And at some point, you get to the tipping point. But most people, a lot of people, they stop before they get to that tipping point and make it over the hump, just because it's just too scary. What if it doesn't work out? What are people going to say? So
do you think it's some of that is just the fear of failure? Like they don't actually believe that they're going to break through anyway. And so if they go over that threshold and then fail, they show the world their talent, or they show the world their music, or they show the world their efforts to lose weight or whatever, that it's easier to just stay
stop, right? Because when you rise above the cream, right, you rise to the top, people want, they take shots at you. I had a manager say once that, people don't shoot at dead dogs, so when you are trying to rise up, there's people that are trying to kind of pull you back down or smack you back down. But the thing about successful people, and Steve told me about this quote that he heard from that Michael Jordan said, was that Michael Jordan said, I'm successful because I failed so much. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it, when we see successful people, we don't see all the times they failed. We just see the success.
Finished product.
Right. You need to see the end, and so we just think, oh, well, they're just smarter. They've got more talent. They've just got this. And we make excuses for ourselves to keep us stuck.
Do you believe in the premise of failure in the sense that you can fail things, or do you believe in setbacks and then applying a positive mindset to moving forward? There's a difference in my view. Well, failure is I failed, I'm done.
You're not done till God says you're done, okay? And failing isn't failing, it's feedback. So that's the way I kind of reframe it, is you're not failed, it's just that wasn't right. Do it again, and this time do it different, right? Yeah. You're just getting feedback that didn't work. Okay, now let's just do it again.
Yeah, because some things are just not going to work out. I may want to look better than I do, and look like I'm 20 years old again. And so there probably is an element of being grounded and realistic at the same time, and not perceiving the fact that not all of us can do all of the things that our imaginations can daydream, and then feeling as though we have failed because we didn't reach that. For example, I may have at one time in my life, with enough hard work, been capable of going to the NBA, but at almost 50 and now having children and running ministries, probably not going to be able, not responsibly, go try out for the NBA. And I kind of want to meet the guy that would want to pay me to play in the NBA. Like, does he exist? I don't know that there's even that guy. But the point is being realistic, somewhere between setting goals that are achievable. How do you frame that? Setting goals that are achievable versus maybe recognizing, without being unhealthy about it, things that are probably not suitable for you.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of people, they just let fear keep them from doing, even setting a goal. Well, yeah, exactly. It's kind of like GPS. It's like, when you have your GPS, you don't put all the places in that you don't want to go, right? You put in where you want to go, right? And GPS doesn't even give you directions until you start moving. So you don't even start taking steps. You've got to start taking steps. You've got to start doing something. You can get all the information, and information does not lead to transformation. Mm-hmm. So you've got to take action. You've got to start taking the steps. And sometimes it doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere, but just like GPS, maybe you made the wrong turn, but you just got to recenter and just keep going. You don't just stop there and say, oh, well, I guess I couldn't get there. I mean, you just say, okay, now which way do we go? So goals are like that. You just got to constantly keep refocusing, and focus on what you want and really visualize. if you can visualize it, you can be it, you know, as long as it's kind of realistic, like you're not going to be in the NBA or something. You're not going to be in the NBA.
You're still not
going to be in the NBA. I'm sorry. Okay.
My family is walking this out as we speak. You know, we have dreams to start programs for kids. We want to do live music. There's things, and my sister Donna Howell, who's in the house with us today, and I have talked about many times. We do, like you said, all the information, everything we've learned about TV, packaging, production, graphics, networks, all the stuff. And all of that could be beneficial, but none of that happens. I don't have the money for what I want to do yet. I don't have the resources or the employees that I'm going to have to hire if we get there. But like none of it comes to pass, Debbie, if we don't start somewhere. So we are.
Somewhere.
We started with our cell phones. We're playing now with some programs suitable for teens that are comedy based, but basically point out the irony of how church is getting certain theological things wrong. And it's trying to appeal to young people in their sense of fun and entertainment with a gospel message. With just a couple of minutes left on the clock, what is one simple shift, if you're watching the show, that somebody can do with their perspective today that might be helpful? And we're going to have Debbie back next week for sure. One tip that somebody can start applying today that won't cost them anything?
Well, so first of all, just pay attention to what you're thinking about and pay attention to the thoughts that are going through your head and see if that aligns with what you want. So you catch yourself just sabotaging yourself with just your thoughts. And then if there's something that you want to achieve, just start visualizing that to the best that you can and just visualize yourself as you've already done it. You know, what does that feel like? What do you feel in your body? What are you telling yourself about how you accomplished that and what that's like to just live that out? And then for 17 seconds a day, just sit and connect with the emotion of that and just the feeling of that. Because if you can't get excited about it, you're not going to motivate yourself to go do it. You can't let go of something until you've got something else to reach for.
Yeah. This is really in line with a lot of other therapists that I've talked with, where they talk about, you know, being attached to the feelings that you might experience when you're in that moment of being, you know, able to do the kids show.
Yeah.
And kind of resting for a minute, because if God has given me that dream to produce content for kids, much like, you know, the old Mr. Rogers show, but doing it now for a contemporized audience, you know, a PTL audience, Christian distribution for kids, that joy, it's like a pre-dividend on what I hope to get to be able to do, is going to inspire me to keep doing the steps towards that outcome. So,
well, you just got to start where you are with what you have, and then it will grow from there.
Exactly.
So you just do what you can right now.
Unfortunately, we're all out of time, but I promise we will have Debbie Troeger back next week. Ladies and gentlemen, for everybody here in studio, Debbie, Jamie, thank you so much for being here right here at Life TV Now. Keep your eyes on the prize, which is Jesus Christ. We'll be back.